Dylan Ames. A longtime Scientologist friend of mine and I were walking by the Center for Blind People, and one of them needed help with directions, so I helped them. My Scientologist friend commented that he had no sympathy for, quote, those people. I can't remember what explanation he gave, but how would a Scientologist explain disabled people? I mentioned, I think, a couple weeks ago something about this whole idea of karma. I think I was asked about karma or something, and I talked about how Scientologists have this idea of pulling things in, right? They don't have the idea of karma as such, but they have the idea that you are responsible for, and maybe this is karma. You know, I mean, I've had a couple comments that this is very karmic. But they have this idea that because you are responsible for your condition, and that you're basically good, you're basically, as a spiritual entity, you basically have good intentions and want yourself and others to do well and be productive and positive, that if you do evil, if you do bad things, and you know you're doing bad things, that you reverse that on yourself in some sort of self-karmic way, right? And this is called pulling it in. And so when Scientologists see, and even more specifically, Hubbard says in a number of places that people with disabilities or people who have something wrong with them, that the person is doing that themselves because they are trying to stop themselves, literally disable themselves, from being able to commit further crimes or harmful actions against others. So if, and it might relate directly, not always, it doesn't have to directly relate to the kind of crime they were committing or the kind of harmful actions they were committing against others. But Hubbard implies and sort of infers and says that it will be, in kind, right? It'll be similar kinds of things. So for example, if a person, and the last thing is that this goes into past lives. Okay, it doesn't have to be a this lifetime thing that you are paying yourself back for or pulling in some kind of badness on yourself or disability on yourself. It could be that you're doing that because last lifetime or 2 or 3 or 4 lifetimes ago, you had a pattern of conduct that was quite harmful and quite not helpful or beneficial to other people. So, for example, okay, let's say that 1,000 years ago or whatever, you were, or 700 years ago, you were a torturer, right? You tortured people. That was your job. And so you gouged people's eyes out. Okay, this is just a stupid example, but this is how Scientologists think of this, right? Let's say you were some horrible person and that was your job, and you really got off on it, and you thought it was fun to do that, and you were gouging people's eyes out, right, as part of your torture techniques or whatever. And after a while, it started dawning on you that maybe this wasn't such a good thing to be doing, and you somehow, pulled in some kind of disability with your hands, or maybe you burn yourself one day and ruin one of your hands or something, so you can't gouge people's eyes out anymore, right? But to continue the payback, right, to continue the, pulling in bad things on yourself because you feel as a good spiritual being so bad for what you've been doing to all these people, maybe in your next life or your next one, you pull in a disability like blindness, right? In other words, you're responsible for having a body that is somehow spiritually been messed up, right? In the womb, maybe, right? Or somehow maybe it's not even you who caused the disability, but maybe when you assumed ownership of the body, you took that body because the baby, the fetus was already congenitally blind. And you took that body on and you said, I'm going to take this one because this is what I deserve. I pulled this in. And you then are born blind, and you're blind for the rest of your life, right? And you feel spiritually that you deserve this because of what you did, all those centuries ago. So there's no specifics in Scientology about how much time has to pass before you would do something like this. Could be this lifetime, could be next lifetimes. And there isn't any real specificity as to how exact the payback is going to be. But Scientologists kind of, relate these things together, right? Like, oh, you were gouging people's eyes out, so of course you're blind, right? Or you were, ruining people's eardrums, and so you're deaf, right? I mean, this kind of thing. Or you have dietary issues or problems of some kind. You have a, real problem with your digestive system or something. Well, that's pulling it in, or something you've created in your current life, in your current body, because back in the day you used to starve people to death. Okay, it's something like that, right? So all of these, these things, I think you get the idea of how these things work, and that's pretty much, as I understand it, how most Scientologists, I think, would explain disabilities, right? And why they feel that those people are not particularly, disabled people are not particularly deserving of anybody's sympathy or compassion or support. And that's horrible, but that's Scientology.